But in the security and relief of his new position, he simply smiled. With only a sheet of glass between him and the room just before him, it was not possible that there wasn't a way past it. Eyes narrowing, he thought for a few moments about what to do. Then his eyes widened, for nothing occurred to him. But still he felt calm. The trembling, he realized, had stopped. At the back of his mind, there lay still the thought that once he was again in his home, he could give release to his feelings. He actually would lie on the floor, rolling, clenching tufts of the rug in his hands. He would literally run across the room, free to move as he liked, jumping on the floor, testing and reveling in its absolute security, letting the relief flood through him, draining the fear from his mind and body. His yearning for this was astonishingly intense, and somehow he understood that he had better keep this feeling at bay. He took $50 from his pocket and struck it against the pane, but without any hope the glass would break, and very little disappointment when it did not. After a few moments of thought, he drew his leg onto the ledge and picked loose the knot of his shoelace. He slipped off the shoe and, holding it across the instep, drew back his arm as far as he dared and struck the leather heel against the glass. The pane rattled, but he knew he'd been a long way from breaking it. His foot was cold, and he slipped the shoe back on. He shouted again, experimentally, and then once more, but there was no answer. The realization suddenly struck him that he might have to wait here till Claire came home, and for a moment the thought was funny. He could see Claire opening the front door, withdrawing her key from the lock, closing the door behind her, and then glancing up to see him crouched on the other side of the window. He could see her rush across the room, face astonished and frightened, and hear himself shouting instructions. "Never mind how I got here. Just open the window." She couldn't open it, he remembered. She'd never been able to. She'd always had to call him. She'd have to get the building superintendent or a neighbor, and he pictured himself smiling and answering their questions as he climbed in. I just wanted to get a breath of fresh air, so... He couldn't possibly wait here till Claire came home. It was the second feature she'd wanted to see, and she'd left in time to see the first. She'd be another 3 hours, or... He glanced at his watch. Claire had been gone 8 minutes. It wasn't possible, but only 8 minutes ago he had kissed his wife goodbye. She wasn't even at the theater yet. It would be 4 hours before she could possibly be home, and he tried to picture himself kneeling out there, fingertips hooked to these narrow strippings, while first one movie, preceded by a slow listing of credits, began, developed, reached its climax, and then finally ended. There'd be a newsreel next, maybe, and then an animated cartoon, and then interminable scenes from coming pictures, and then, once more, the beginning of a full-length picture, while all the time he hung out there in the night.